Well, good morning. My name is Jessica. I'm one of the pastors at Twin Lakes, and as always, it's great to be joining you for the video Devo today. In the past few months, I've gone to 2 memorial services for 2 men who lived into their 90s. And really, the memorial services were about as different as memorial services can be. It really was kind of a jarring reality to go to one after the other. And so I thought I'd share about those this morning because it has caused me to spend some time reflecting on life and what is important. So the first memorial service I went to was for Paul Barton. He was a pastor on staff at Twin Lakes for decades. And this service celebrated both him and his wife, Nelda. Now, I never really knew Paul. I didn't come on the scene at Twin Lakes until he was into his 80s. So I would see him around campus, and he was always encouraging and full of joy and light and life. Paul was hired as the associate pastor. His main role was worship. He led the youth choir, the radio ministry. Later in life, he moved into the care ministries, spent lots of time visiting people in the hospital. And so I wanted to go to this memorial just because it was such a big event in the life of Twin Lakes as a church. And I went, and it was amazing. There were hundreds of people from all over who gathered to celebrate Paul's life. Like I said, Paul had been in charge of the youth choir, and so kids from the youth choir came and sang, and there were about 60 people that sang a beautiful rendition of When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. And as I sat there listening and watching, I recognized the parents and grandparents of kids that I have had at youth group at Twin Lakes. You know, the impact of Paul and his wife Nelda is remarkable. They faithfully served Jesus, building his kingdom here on earth. And it was obvious in every aspect of the service, from the music to the eulogies to the slideshows. Those in attendance were saddened to lose Paul, but it was also a time of great celebration for a man who had made a huge impact. And then a few months later, I went to another memorial service. And like I said, this one was different. It was really awkward. There were only a few people, mostly relatives, and a few friends who were there to support their family. This memorial was for a man who spent his entire life pursuing what the world tells us is important. He had a great career in the medical field. He had a condo in an exotic destination, a beachfront condo. He had his pilot's license, and so he owned a small airplane, and he flew all over the United States and Mexico. He owned multiple properties in different places in California. In terms of prestige and possessions, he had it all. He was set. But his family was a mess. He had 4 sons with 3 different women, only 2 of whom actually got to live with him and have him as their father. All of the sons struggle with addiction to various degrees. And the 2 who did grow up with him, he enabled so much that they really aren't functioning as normal adults. Conversations were challenging, and nobody really had a lot to say. It was incredibly awkward. And the difference between these 2 memorials was jarring, and it really caused me to think, what am I living for? And what's my memorial going to be like? And what will people say? Is it going to be awkward, or is it going to be this celebration of a life well lived and a life of impact? New York Times writer David Brooks writes about building your resume or building your eulogy. You know, we spend so much time in our younger years worrying about building our resume, about building something that looks good, that's going to get us the next job and get us hired for something else that will open more doors. But in reality, it's the things that build a eulogy are the ones that have lasting value. Those are the things that brought people to Paul Barton's memorial. So the man whose memorial was awkward, he had a great resume, but he left behind a legacy of brokenness and dysfunction when it came to the relationships in his life and his family. Paul, on the other hand, his resume really only had one job: pastor at Twin Lakes Church, the one job he held from the time of college until the time of retirement. And yet that one job and the way he lived his life, he built a lasting legacy. Not because that was his goal, but because he was serving Jesus Christ, his Savior, and sharing the love, grace, and forgiveness of Christ with others. So I know this has caused me to think about my life. So maybe today, take some time to think about it. What are you building? Where's your focus? You know, I'm now focused more on my impact. I want to live in a way that glorifies Jesus and spreads his kingdom here and now in our world today. I hope you have a great day.